This is Art Talk with April, an artist podcast where we meet artists from all around the southeastern states and around the world. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art Talk with April. Today I have Rosie Fitzgerrel, and Rosie is a landscape and figurative and portrait painter, as well as a graphic designer. And you present the meeting of these two elements as a neutral observer. And you work in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So what is your primary medium that you use, Rosie?
I love a type of paint called flash. It's spelled Flashe. It's made by a French company, Bourgeois, I think is how you say it. I don't know French. And it's a vinyl emulsion paint. So it's sort of like an in-between acrylic and gouache. So it's still like it's still a plastic product, but it's vinyl and so that is more flexible. So the paint was originally created for, I think in the 50s, for painting the backgrounds, the sets of like operas and plays. Yes, because it's vinyl, it can like adhere to all kinds of surfaces really well. And then I believe in the 60s and 70s, illustrators started using it for, painting the illustrations for advertisements.
Yeah.
And so I had seen some YouTube videos about it, and I was painting primarily in gouache, and I wanted to start like scaling up my work and working on canvas. And I tried acrylic paint and I wasn't really jiving with it. So I thought it dries matte. It dries very quickly. It dries very flat because I'm not really a texture. I don't like the canvas texture either at all. And so I tried it and it was sort of like, oh, this is my medium. Like this, I'm jiving like really well with this. And so I do all of my canvas paintings with flash paint. So, and a lot of people haven't either, heard of it before, or maybe they heard of it, but they haven't tried it. So if anybody's interested in trying it, it's great. It's fairly inexpensive. I think it's like $11 for a good size tube. And it's light fast. If you go on the Bourgeois website, you can get like a color chart to get the translucency of each color and also the light fastness. They have some like neon colors as well. So anyway, I love it.
That is fascinating to me because it's rare. I feel like that I come across something I've never heard of, and I have never heard of that. And I am also just sort of testing the waters of gouache. And so when you said that it was between acrylics and gouache, I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's a whole nother sort of level in there. And it's kind of interesting how I guess we as artists kind of find those very specific mediums that are just right that we like, it doesn't have like a texture thing, and that's what you wanted,
Yes, because I'll gesso my canvas like 7 or 8 times because I don't want any canvas texture coming through. And I like that it dries quickly so that I can jump. I'm not worrying about, I don't want any blending. I don't like blending my colors. I like sort of the hard lines in between a lot of the colors. So, and it also doesn't, gouache has a big color shift, right? It darkens quite a bit as it dries.
Yeah.
And flash, it does have a little bit of a color shift, but not as big of a jump as gouache. I've noticed some colors in flash do have a bigger color shift, like their burnt sienna color has been a little bit trickier for me to work with. And, that's not to say like it's the perfect paint and like has no problems or, just like with every medium, there's like little quirks and things that you have to learn about it. But what I really enjoy about it is the vibrancy of the color. And so when I varnish my paintings, I just do a spray, like a matte archival varnish, and it just adds just like the right amount of depth without adding the gloss that I don't like, which is
Mm,
really great because also makes it very easy to like scan or photograph if you want to like,
absolutely.
do reproductions or prints or anything like that.
Yeah. Man, I mean, you're like you every little thing that you're talking about, I want to ask you more and more questions about it. But we kind of skipped ahead a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
So let's go backwards and yes, like
Time
rewind.
traveling, yes.
So tell us about your journey into being a creative person. Like, is this something that you started when you were younger, or did you go to school for it?
I don't know, sort of. I was reflecting on this question.
Yeah.
I have two kids, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they're both very creative. My 7-year-old is very like into the visual arts, and he's always like up in his room drawing and painting. And I was thinking of like, man, did I do that when I was a
Yeah.
kid? He's like making books and stuff like that. And I don't know that
Oh,
I
that's so
did.
cool.
I don't have like a family history of artists or anything like that. My mom is a nurse and my dad, he's retired now, but he was an electrician. So the only thing I can think of is like I did audition I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I auditioned for the School for Creative and Performing Arts for 8th grade. And you have to get into for two things. So I was like, oh, I'm going to get in for art because I think I'm really good at that. And I'm going to get in for acting because I'm really great at that. And I got in, but for singing and for writing, not.
Oh, wow.
And so I was always really interested in art, but it was one of those things where it was like, ooh, like, should I pursue it? Am I, good enough? That's something that I really struggled with in high school and in college. So actually, when I started looking where to go for college, I was looking at majoring in like English and maybe being a teacher or something like that. And I remember we were in the like tour group for like English majors. And I like looked across and I saw the sign for graphic design. And I told my mom, I want to jump over to that tour, actually, if that's okay. And so then I did. And then I got into the University of Cincinnati for graphic design. So that's what I majored in and I studied. And then I ended up dropping out around like year 4. I was just really struggling with my mental
Oh,
health and figuring out, this is all like stuff that I figured out in retrospect, but like
yeah.
not at the time realizing that I struggled a lot with like perfectionism. And my difficulty was because the way that the college course was set up was every other quarter you were doing a paid internship. So you were getting real world experience as a designer and you could build out your portfolio and your resume. And so I love that. I never had any problems doing that. But the quarters that we had studios, I was essentially, my own client. And so then I really struggled with like, oh, this isn't good enough. This isn't like meeting my standards. Um, and just I thought my value was in what I could produce. Equating like if I was good enough as a person with is my work good enough, and not being
Mm.
able to separate those two things. So yeah, so I dropped out of school because my fiance at the time, he got a job in Rhode Island. And I was like, what's in Rhode Island? I don't know. I want to
Yeah.
go with you. And I was very happy to kind of like be done with that phase. So then I started working professionally as a graphic designer, working in like a small agency in Providence. We lived there for about 5 years. And then we moved to Chattanooga a little over a decade ago, which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
And so like during this time, I wasn't really drawing, or like I would dabble here and there in my sketchbook and then just kind of feel like disappointed or frustrated. Like it
Mhm.
didn't feel good to make art. It's just like, well, I, I'm still not good at it, which like, duh, because I'm not practicing. Of course I'm not good at it. But, in my head, I was comparing myself to my peers, in
Mhm.
school. And there were some people that were like really amazing artists. And I was like, oh, why can't I, do it like that? So I kind of shied away from it and would just dabble here and there, or like, the Inktober the challenges that pop up around October, which now there's so many, but
Yeah.
I would like, oh, maybe I should try Inktober, and I would do it for a couple days, and I'm like, ugh, I'm just like not good at this. And so then I would stop. And so when we moved to Tennessee, we started growing our family. So I had my daughter, and around the age of 5, she started exhibiting a lot of symptoms of OCD and ADHD. And
Yeah.
so then we started medication and therapy, and I would go with her to all these therapy appointments, and she was only 5 when she started. It was very severe. Like, she thought she was being poisoned all the time, and
Oh my
she
goodness.
thought she was being bitten by venomous snakes and eating poison dart frogs. And yeah, it was very like all consuming. And so anyway, I was like in therapy and, trying to like learn all of these tools that we could bring home to help her, not
Mhm.
really realizing in the process that like all of these a lot of these things were like applicable to me also. I mean, I would
Yeah.
see the way that she would react to not being able to. She was learning. We did homeschool kindergarten because it was 2020, and so she would have an anxiety attack and be screaming on the floor because she didn't write the letter A exactly the correct way. So we couldn't do
Yeah.
anything on paper. Everything had to be on a whiteboard when she was learning her letters so that she could easily erase it and redo it, because if it was on paper, it was like too permanent, right? And then she could see her mistake. So anyway, as we're going through therapy and she's learning things, I'm learning things about
Yeah.
her and then like also myself. And again, like I wasn't making that connection to art,
Mm.
in that moment. But a few years after that, I got a gift card from the agency that I work with. And so I was like, well, I watched a few YouTube videos on this gouache thing. Like, I
Yeah.
tried that in art school or in design school and I hated it, but they're making really cool stuff. Like, what if I tried it? So I got myself a Winsor and Newton gouache set and some
Oh,
paintbrushes and a small
yeah.
sketchbook. And I just started, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I looked up, one of those October prompt lists as just sort of like a starting point. And I was having fun. Like, I wasn't being critical of myself. I was just like enjoying it, enjoying connecting, having this hobby, and people were, I was trying to share what I was doing, even though, it felt kind of vulnerable. I wasn't
Yeah.
confident at all at what I was doing, but people were like positively responding to it,
Yeah.
whether or not, they were. That's a wonderful thing about like, friends, and like your value doesn't lie in just the things that you produce if they're good enough. It's like, oh, you friends who value you and appreciate that you're trying something new and that you're investing in yourself, whether or not that like produces good art or not. They're
Yeah.
more seeing the value in your own personal growth and like honoring that. So yeah, and then just like I kind of like took off like a rocket. Like, I just like, wow, I really love this, and I'm just like inhaling everything. And I realized, looking back, like going through therapy with my daughter, I recognized all of these things that the incorrect way that I was viewing things, and I didn't know how to like navigate my own brain. And now she had these tools, and wow, I also had these tools. And so like when my brain says you're a horrible artist, like you're never going to be good, I'm like, oh, nope, that's a sticky thought. That's not true. Like, I may not know how to do it right now, but I can learn how to do it. And approaching everything is just like with a growth mindset and
Mm.
as a positive challenge rather than this like negative thing where like, oh, you can't do it. You're stupid. You don't even know how to draw.
Yeah.
And so then I bought some more like art books, like James Gurney's Color and Light, which is a great book.
It is.
It's a book that you can always like flip back through and maybe like pick up on something new. But I really wanted to get better at portraiture.
Yeah.
And so I bought I think it's Jake Spicer's, like it's called By the End of This Book, You Will Be Able to Draw Portraits. And it's
Mm.
kind of like a workbook that takes you like step by step where you're drawing within the book, these different
Yeah.
exercises. And by the end, I was like, wow, like I can draw a face and it looks like a face. And it actually improved my drawing skills like across
Oh,
the
yeah.
board, right? Like it improved my artist's eye. And so
Yeah.
I bought a figure drawing book after that he'd put out. And I was going through it and I was kind of realizing like, oh, like I'm not starting at square one. Like I actually can do this. And I've learned so much and I've just honed my eye where it's so, I'm much more accurate and can figure out proportions and things like that. And so, yeah, it's just been this like kind of quick, 2 or 3 year growth of like not making any art or being afraid of failing or feeling like if I do fail, I'm not a good person or, seeing my value that and then realizing like my work is separate from who I am as a person and which is silly because that's what we learn in design school, right? Like you
Yeah.
learn how to take criticism and
Yeah.
you're able to separate your work from yourself. And that was the thing is like people could say, like, oh, this is horrible, like redo this design, redo this website or logo or whatever. And I'd be like, sure, that's fine. Like whatever you want. But I
Yeah.
couldn't do that with my art for whatever reason. And so it's been interesting to kind of like look back and connect these dots of, you know, things that were going on with my mental health. And, I feel kind of silly about it because it's not like I had any big trauma or anything like that. I grew up in a
Sure.
very like supportive, loving home and great parents, but I just really like didn't know how to navigate my own brain.
I think a lot of artists, creative people kind of, it's one of those professions that we can be so deeply ingrained with what we're doing and so work so closely with it because as a graphic designer myself, I'm probably the same way, like I could take criticism all day, like tell me you want something changed, I'll change it. I'm not going to even question necessarily unless it's something absurd. And then I'll be like, well, what if we do it this way and show another version, like this is what this is going to look like, but it could look like this, and be real, I don't know, like adaptable with revisions and stuff like that. But then when it comes with like art, it's a little harder, it's like, well, I put a lot of thought into this, and there's a reason that I did it the way I did it, and there's a reason why I chose these colors, and there's a reason why I like this medium, and now you're telling me it's not good enough, or I can't get into this show, or I can't, get into this gallery, or whatever it is, or my art's not selling. I don't know. I think what you're saying about that is such a, I don't know, sort of universal experience for a lot of creative people. So that's absolutely fascinating. And I'm glad that you brought that up because holy cow. And then, just kind of realizing that it's not directly connected to your own value as a human being, like if you're making so much art or if you're posting so much art or is it getting this many likes, or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, and I was contemplating too of can art exist within a vacuum because we live in this world now where social media is just ingrained in our lives. And so there's this element of as artists, are we making art for social media? Are we making it for our own ego? Or
Sure.
are we making art for a different reason? And I think, like, reflecting back, part of my struggle was I wanted to make art for my own ego. Like I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be liked. And making art now, that's not my goal. I like to share my art and I don't think art can exist within a vacuum. I think art is made to be shared. Art is for connection. I mean, I think about, musicians or actors, performance artists, like you're not sitting in your living room, performing Shakespeare to a wall.
Yeah.
What is the point of that? You might
Yeah.
enjoy it on some level, but it's so much more enjoyable to be performing it in front of an audience, whether or not it's just your friends or family or strangers, because it's that transfer of energy, if you will, between yourself and the audience that is really like moves through you, and that's the exciting part. And as visual artists, it's a little bit different because we're not always there feeling like the immediate connection between like what we're sharing and how people are experiencing or reacting to it, unless you go to a opening and your work is in a show or something like that, then maybe you can hear the people around you. And so social media has provided this avenue in order to kind of like receive that immediate connection, or feedback or criticism or whatever from an audience of strangers or friends or family. Yeah. So, but I think there certainly are artists that do make art more for the sake of ego. And I guess it's up to, I wouldn't say like neither one is better than the other. It's just a matter of like what resonates with you. And I feel like I've been able to become more neutralized about some of these things and more less critical, I guess, and like embracing more different perspectives or the different reasons why people make art.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you brought that up because that's something that I think about all the time. Like, why am I doing this? Am I
Mm-hmm.
just to like get like, you know how people can treat you or suggest, like maybe you're trying to do like get attention, or am I doing it for the likes? Am I doing it for, like that dopamine, hey, somebody liked my post thing,
And like kind of, right?
Yeah,
Like we are human beings, right? And like
yeah,
people want to
absolutely.
be, we're
Sure.
social animals. Like we have these social hierarchies. We historically have lived in these communities, these tight knit communities where we rely upon one another. And
Yeah.
yeah, we want to be seen and heard and understood. And so I don't think I think a lot of, or some people look down on that. And I don't think it's something to be looked down on. It's just a different point of connection. Or like, sometimes I'm posting stuff and I'm like, I don't feel confident about it, but I'm just sharing it because maybe somebody's not feeling confident about their work and they can like, well, she shared it and like that looks like garbage, but that makes me feel better or whatever. Or like just showing that it's okay to be vulnerable. And sometimes I share
Yeah.
stuff because like I'm genuinely really proud of it and I think it's really cool and I
Yeah.
want to share it. And
Yeah.
like, not that I'm looking for everybody to like ooh and ah over me, but I put a lot of time into this thing.
Yeah.
And you might appreciate it too. So yeah, there's lots of different reasons. It's very complex. I don't think it's
It,
black and white. I don't think
that's
social media is black and white. And too, I think about again, like historically artist communities, we talk about these salons and societies. I recently learned about the Group of Seven, which was a group of Canadian landscape painters. I think some of them also did portraits, but primarily landscapes. And it
yeah.
wasn't seven, it was actually like 11 or 13 different artists and throughout the 1900s, 1910s, 20s, 30s. And they would meet in Toronto and like share each other's work and discuss things, probably discuss things happening in their personal life too. But, social media has just moved, that from a physical, like the third space to the digital space, but it
Yeah.
still exists and it has always existed. It's just in a different format.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of, and I mean, it's such a human thing to just, and do feel like, at its like most simplest form, part of the reason that we create is we're trying to communicate and connect with other people. So, yeah, it's not necessarily bad to want that connection and want that, sort of like, hey, like for other people to acknowledge, I guess, what you've made. But I think too, it's kind of like you have to have this balance of, okay, what is my purpose in doing this? So like for many years I did these chalk drawing contests, and chalk drawing contests on like, pavement, it's just going to go away. It's just going to be
Yes.
washed away. And people would ask a lot because it would take a whole day to make it.
You're covering a large surface.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, like 6 feet by 6 feet sort of thing. And people would be like, why are you doing that? Like, it's just going to, wash away. And what's the point? But it was so fun. And it was part of like a festival thing, like most of them are. But I did it for years and years and years. And there was always this question of, okay, what's the point? Like it's not going to stay, you know? And so that's a whole nother kind of, question around like, okay, why am I doing this? Or what is the purpose of this? Is it in the making of the thing? Is it me just creating something? Does someone have to see it? Do I have to share it? Or is it okay if it just, gets washed away or just gets put in a closet or whatever it is? Like what's my purpose and meaning around it? So I think that's really interesting. And looking at your work and your landscapes, it's so hard for me to believe that at any point you could possibly think that it wasn't good enough because they're so awesome.
Oh,
And I
thank
mean,
you.
like
But
you're
I've improved a lot.
well, I
I
mean,
used to
we
be less
all do
awesome. Yes,
though.
we
I
all
mean,
do.
it's like, it's not I can't remember. It was like a month ago. I came across like an old picture on my phone and it was a portrait I had done of myself in like kindergarten. And I showed my kids. I was like, guys, come here, look at this. Look, do you see what this is? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, this is how I used to draw when I was your age, And they were just like, oh. I said,
Right.
it's practice.
Yes, that's been a very important lesson that I'm trying to impart on my kids as well, because I think just seeing some of the people that were around me that were sort of, naturally talented or picked up on it very, very quickly, and then me feeling bad about it. I was like, well, probably not practicing as much. And so for them to see, I remind them all the time, like, hey, like, guys, just a few years ago I was drawing like this and now I draw like this. And, that was me learning and, drawing almost every day and practicing. And it's okay. You're not going to be good at something when you start. And that's not important. You don't have to be good at it. I
Yeah.
think about too, there was a study of kids in STEM. So they looked at kids who had really high scores on math and science versus kids who had lower scores, but who were interested in pursuing careers in STEM after high school.
Yeah.
And the kids that had low scores but were interested in actually pursuing it did much better and went on to go ahead and have those careers in STEM at a much higher percentage than the kids who had good grades but weren't necessarily interested in that career path. Because the kids in STEM, or the kids that were interested in STEM, kept practicing and were got better and better and learned more and more, and they had that drive, that curiosity that moved them forward. And that is much more important than any kind of natural talent. You can always improve, and like, I'm never going to be like like a Rembrandt or anything like that, but I can improve to a level that I feel happy and satisfied with. And looking back, you might be like, oh, I thought I was good then, but like,
Yeah.
man, that looks really bad now. But that's okay. That's just part
Yeah.
of the journey. And also recognizing that your work back then was still valuable and there was
Yeah.
still merit in it, even if you wouldn't do it that way anymore.
Like you just always keep growing, and seeing that old work is kind of like a validation of, okay, yeah, like I should be spending time on this because I'm getting better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's one artist that I follow, and she really emphasizes like, keep all of your old sketchbooks, because it's really cool to go back through and see how you've improved or changed. And like, that's very valuable. And
Absolutely.
don't get mad at yourself for like not being good at drawing faces or hands or whatever, because that demonstrates to you that you have the ability to grow and learn and adapt and
Yeah.
change. Yeah.
Or remind you, like if you're feeling kind of like I just suck at this, like I'm not good at it at all. I'm not getting any better. Go back and look at some of your old stuff and then you'll realize, oh my God, like it's really a lot better.
Yes. And even like artists that I followed, before. And I would just be like, wow, how are they doing this? This is amazing. It's blowing me away. And then like I look at it now, I'm like, oh, it's like not, because my taste level has changed, but now I'm like perceiving their work in a different way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting to kind of like track that stuff
Yeah.
and your own trajectory and journey and just being open to learning and always being a student. I don't know if you've listened to the new Lady Gaga album, but
No, I
um
haven't yet. My daughter would love it, I'm
I
sure.
tried playing it for my daughter and she was like, oh, this is so old. I'm like, yeah, she's my age. Yes, Lady Gaga. But like just listening to her talk in interviews about this album. And it's really interesting because she talks a lot about her current partner, her
Yeah.
fiance, and just kind of having that like freedom that comes with when you have a support system who values you and sees your value no matter what you're
Hmm.
producing, that kind of gives you the ability to go off and make, interesting different things. It gives you the confidence that you're still loved and cared for, even if you go off on these different directions. And then she talks a lot about always being a student, always learning and staying curious and studying and growing. And so like, that's something that I've really tried to like take to heart too, is that I mean, that's the great thing about art is like there's always something new to learn, always
Absolutely.
a different way to challenge yourself, a different style or different medium or different, painting outside versus painting from a photograph, like all of these things and just approaching that from rather than like I can't do this or like I don't know if I'm going to be good at this, or it's probably like I'm probably not going to be good at this, but that's okay. I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time doing this 6 by 6 foot chalk drawing that's going to get washed
Yeah.
away.
I think I've always kind of thought about, well, not always, but I guess as I've gotten older, sort of realized how much creativity and art, like visual art, is kind of scientific in a way because you keep learning, you keep going down these curiosity paths, but you're experimenting. That's what you're essentially doing. Every time that you start something, it's another experiment, right? You don't necessarily know how it's going to turn out, but you're going to take these elements and play with them in some sort of way, either a new way or a way that you've done before, and you just keep sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of tweaking it just a little bit here, a little bit there. What if I do it like this? What if I use this different paper or, whatever it is?
Right. Like you're forming a different
Yeah.
hypothesis each
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Yes.
And you're just constantly explore. At least that's how I feel about it. Like, I feel like I'm just constantly experimenting. And if something felt like it didn't work out, then I just start again and try something different.
Rather than taking it personally as a failure
Yeah,
or that
yeah.
you're failing or that you're not good at it. I mean, I went to a life drawing open studio session last night, which is not something. This is only the second time like I've ever done that painting, or drawing a nude model. We
Yeah,
did
that's
that
cool.
in high school with like closed clothed, models from
Yeah.
that we pulled from study hall or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, you want to come pose for the art class? And so the model, she had like very beautiful, like freckly light brown skin. And so as I was, trying to capture her skin tone, I realized like I wasn't nailing it. And yeah, I think to that point of like I felt like a little bit like a scientist of like, okay, I need to like use more blue, more ultramarine, and my how I'm mixing my paint, and maybe I can use more burnt sienna or what
Yeah.
sort of different mixes, and also just like recognizing like I'm not going to nail it on this painting, but like I'm excited to maybe take this painting and do another study and try
Hmm.
some like different paint mixes. And yeah, it is just sort of like a constant finding and taking in that information and yeah, seeing what different
Yeah.
combinations make.
This is a two-part interview with Rosie Fitzgerrel. So stay tuned till next Tuesday for part 2. Thank you for listening to Art Talk with April. New episodes are out every Tuesday at 6 p.m.